So sometimes we find otherworldly explanations from real events like that.
Another reason ghostly legends develop can be traced to the way the dead are regarded by certain cultures. In some societies, it is customary to honor those who have died by welcoming their spiritual presence. And to anger or dishonor one's ancestors is a sin for which one cannot be forgiven.
In Asian cultures, there is a sense of connection between the living and the dead, that it doesn't end when life ends. And there's a constant sense of having loved ones remain a part of the family and of doing honor to them even after they have gone, even to several generations past. So when you go to cemeteries, for instance, you will see offerings. You will also see personal shrines in people's homes, particularly among Buddhists. You will see photographs of deceased loved ones, perhaps with a bowl that chimes to call in the spirits, and also incense to burn. And people will often leave food offerings at these personal altars.
In many Asian communities, elaborate rituals and ceremonies are carried out upon the death of a loved one in order to appease the spirit of the deceased.
If a spirit is not pacified and happy and doesn't make the transition into the next realm peacefully, then that spirit, it's very similar actually to Western beliefs about ghosts, so that spirit will be doomed in a sense.
The tradition of ancestor veneration, or the ceremonial honoring of one's dead relatives, has its roots in Buddhism.
Moggallana was one of the disciples of Buddha, and one night he fell asleep, and in dreaming he had a vision of his deceased mother, and she was gaunt and her face was very sad, and she was holding a bowl of rice, and he saw her take some rice and lift it to her mouth, but as soon as it touched her lips it burst into flames. And then Moggallana woke, and he was very disturbed by seeing his mother this way. So he went to the Buddha to ask for advice, and the Buddha told him that in order to pacify his mother, who was now in the land of the hungry ghost, that he must go to the priests and have them conduct certain ceremonies and give certain offerings. And when he had done all of these things, he fell asleep again, and he saw another vision of his mother, and this time she had a full face. She was holding the full bowl of rice and was able to eat. And when Moggallana awoke from this dream, he began to dance. And it was a dance of joy.
In the traditional art and literature of Japan, ghosts, demons, and other spirit entities appear more than in any other culture. They are of diverse kinds, both good and evil. In the story of the tofu seller's first wife, the ghost could be considered good or it might be considered evil, depending upon where your sympathies lie. One day, the ghost of a grieving woman saw a blind man walking along a path. She needed someone to help her with a task, but because of her appearance, all those she tried to ask for assistance ran from her in terror. Not wanting to frighten the blind man as well, the ghost woman carefully approached him so that she might explain to him her plight. When she was alive, she told him she had been the beautiful wife of a tofu seller. But then she died, and her husband remarried. The tofu seller's second wife was an evil woman and had a habit of terrorizing the first wife's child. The ghost woman had come back to set things right. But she was unable to enter the house where her husband and child lived because the second wife had placed a talisman on the doorway which kept ghosts and spirits out. The ghost woman needed the blind man's help to remove the charm. Having pity on her, the man agreed, and after he took the talisman down, the ghost woman entered the house with a strange smile on her face. She had barely gone inside when the blind man heard a terrible scream, and then silence. Later, it was determined that the second wife had been literally frightened to death. No one knew exactly how such a thing could have happened, except the blind man. The coexistence of ghosts and ancestor spirits among the living is an accepted part of everyday life in Japan. But at one time, in another country, thousands of miles away, ghosts were actually outlawed by a nervous government which feared an uprising from the underworld. Where could this unusual country be? We'll find out next. Bone-chilling accounts of goblins and ghouls out to destroy humankind have caused many to fear the things that go bump in the night. But what threat do ghosts really present? In the 19th century, the Native American ghost dance movement, based on the concept of summoning ancestor spirits to help restore a nation, was such a threat to some that it became the catalyst for one of the bloodiest battles in American history.
It's difficult to say anything general about American Indian cultures because there are thousands of them, and they exist over two continents of the planet.
There are over 200 languages still utilized today and over 500 tribes throughout North America alone that have very similar yet very distinct spiritual and cultural value systems.
If there's anything that can be said in general, it probably is that ghosts, or the word ghost, has a negative connotation. Most Native people will not talk about ghosts, and you find little traditions that have anything positive to say about the entity that we refer to as a ghost. However, the word spirit has a different connotation. Everything has spirit in it. Nature is filled with spirit.
Spirits are around us at all times. The spirits of our ancestors we call upon for strength and acknowledgement. When one passes on, it's a continuum, if you will, of life that's already been experienced. One is going on to the next life and will carry on from those aspects.
And the idea of helpful spirits and familial spirits are certainly well defined within Native traditions. Yet the idea of a ghost is one of a corrupted personality, one that can be infectious, one that can cause sickness if one is nearby. There is a notable exception to the negative perception of ghosts by Native Americans, and that would be in the case of the 19th century ghost dance. That was a popular revitalization movement that took place on the plains. It actually began in the west, out on the edge of California, with a Paiute prophet named Wovoka, who promised to his followers that if they were to dance in the manner that he described and sing songs that he brought to them, that they would have a chance to see once again deceased relatives, to see the plains replenished with buffalo, and Native American sovereignty flourish once again on the continent.
Individuals would dance together, the whole tribe, and you'd see hundreds and up to thousands of people that would get in a circle, which was very significant, to call upon the ancestors. There are 7 directions of the circle, which is the traditional northeast, west, south, as well as up and down, and the most important direction is within. When we look within ourselves, and within ourselves, the spirits of our ancestors are always going to be there for us.
The ghost dance, as explained by Wovoka, was one where people gathered in circles, holding hands, and danced until they collapsed in reverie. They adorned themselves with shirts that had special markings on them that were recognizable to other practitioners and were referred to as ghost shirts. The popularity of the ghost dance was so complete on the plains that it frightened U.S. officials into thinking that it would create a revival of warrior traditions, and that Native people, being encouraged by the idea of the ghost dance, might stage another revolution and try to take back their country. So the ghost dance was literally outlawed by the United States government, and practitioners were persecuted by the U.S. Army. The worst example of this came at the Battle of Wounded Knee, which is considered to be the end of the American Indian sovereignty period in the United States. At Wounded Knee, a group of ghost dancers who were following a leader named Bigfoot were massacred by the 7th Cavalry, who were brought to the battlefield specifically to give them a chance to avenge Custer's massacre. And in a very bloody incident in American history, the ghost dance, the ghost dancers, the ghost shirts were all laid in red in the white snows.
We lost so many of our young, talented people due to those efforts of the U.S. government that we had a lot of spirits that left too early. But the spirits of our ancestors are always with us, and we're taught to respect and always acknowledge the spirits that have been before us, that have given their lives for the betterment of the people, for the tribe, for the group.
One of the world's most unusual ghost legends originates in West Africa. It seems that when it comes to home security, burglar